Hello, everybody. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes just while people join us. So please bear with us. Wonderful. I can see people joining. So welcome. We will begin shortly. Okay, so if you're only just joining us, you haven't missed anything yet. We are just waiting for people to join. Excuse me. As Jane and Amy know, I've suddenly got a tickle in my throat, so apologies. I am trying to clear it before we start. Right, well, let's get going. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this month. And let's get started. So what are we going to cover today? Okay, so we're going to be looking at an introduction to dementia. What is dementia? How does it affect the individual? And some signs and symptoms of dementia to look out for. We're going to be busting the myths surrounding dementia. Is what we know about dementia true, or do we still believe some common misconceptions? Because we know that media can play a part in what we believe certain conditions to be. We're going to give you some top tips for supporting individuals with dementia and making sure that we positively impact the lives of those living with dementia. And of course, how to raise awareness and understanding, and looking at local events and charities that you can reach out to if you are supporting or have a loved one with dementia. So that's what we're going to be covering today. So welcome to our session. So let's do some introductions. Who are we? So we'll kick off with the ones from my learning cloud that you've met many a time. Amy, over to you.
Hi, so I am the Senior Digital Content Specialist with My Learning Cloud, which is basically a long way of saying that I manage the e-learning creation and delivery here. That's me, and I've been with My Learning Cloud for about 3 or 4 years now, and I have a background in providing care and support.
Wonderful. I'm Gemma. You'll be used to me on these webinars by now. And I am the business development lead at My Learning Cloud. So I support all new business, marketing, and e-learning like Amy. It's a passion of ours. And with that in mind, I'm working with some amazing SMEs on the courses that we create. We are here today with the wonderful Dr. Jane Mullins. Welcome, Jane.
Oh, hi. I just sorry for a minute. Somebody in the chat said they couldn't hear us, so I'm not sure.
Oh,
Ellen Wikes, is it?
Yeah, if anyone else could let us know if you can't hear us. Normally, sometimes with Zoom, you have to join with audio. So you may have to press a button, Ellen, on your settings so that you're able to hear us.
wonderful. And on that note, just before Jane introduces herself, if you have any Q's and A's going through the webinar, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A area. Amy will be keeping an eye on it. And if they don't feed into where we are, don't panic. We've got a Q&A area at the end where we'll go through everything and answer all your questions where we can. So please get your questions over to us and we will get them answered for you. So anyway, without further ado, Jane.
Hello, I'm Jane Mullins. I'm a dementia nurse consultant. I've been around rather a long time. I've worked with people living with dementia for about 35 years, from supporting them through diagnosis, caring in hospital home, and in managing a care home. And I've also been very much involved in research and teaching. And I've also the author of Finding the Light in the Dementia as well for families.
Amazing. And thank you so much for joining us, Jane. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. As I said earlier, Jane has worked with us and has gone through our dementia e-learning course that we have written that all of you will have on your LMS. So it's been a great journey, and what's really nice is when you meet people on the same page as you about terminology and the ways of supporting individuals going forward, and really moving away from that historic approach to supporting individuals with dementia. Me and Jane met at an awards evening, didn't we, Jane? Under very unusual circumstances, but nonetheless we met. And since then, we've been chatting. So it's really great to do this today together.
And thank you for having me as well. I meant to say both of you as well.
Oh, it's honestly, thank you for being here. So, first of all, as we said, we want to go into a bit of an introduction about what is dementia, because I think people think they know, but can we just get a bit of more of a detailed version of what dementia is, Jane, please?
Yep. Okay. So dementia is a word, actually, for a number of conditions that affect the brain. And they are what we call neurodegenerative, which basically means they're so the neurological effect in the brain, and that they are progressive. So that over time, the person who has a diagnosis of a type of dementia will go on to deteriorate. So it's quite a distressing condition, or they are distressing conditions to have, but we've learned so much over the last 30 odd years that we can help support people. So the conditions affect the brain in different areas at different speeds and in different ways. That's what makes it so complicated. So as often people who have dementia say, just because you've met one person who has dementia, that doesn't mean other people are going to be like them. So the common types of dementia that we're very aware of, Alzheimer's disease is a type of dementia. So dementia is this umbrella term, and Alzheimer's disease is just one condition. We also have vascular dementia, which is caused by often little strokes to the brain. We have Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's disease dementia. And there's also frontotemporal dementia and posterior cortical atrophy. And there's lots of other dementias with very long names, but these are the main ones that we are seeing more commonly. Signs and symptoms differ depending on the dementia. So we know that people who have Alzheimer's disease, often when they come to the memory clinic, first of all, they will have struggled perhaps with some memory problems, some short-term memory problems. So I don't know if any of you know how long your short-term memory is. It's actually about 12 seconds. So if somebody's struggling with their short-term memory, that explains why they're in a bit of a loop of repeating themselves over and over again. So it must be really distressing. The person may also experience disorientation to time and place. They might have got lost in familiar surroundings. And then they also may struggle to find their words, which I probably will do today as well. Whereas Lewy body dementia may be very different. So this is very characteristic of more of Parkinson's disease symptoms. So a person who has Lewy body dementia may actually not have any memory problems for quite some time. So their symptoms are more maybe around having a tremor, maybe falling, mobility problems, or also having hallucinations and what we call delusions, which are fixed beliefs. That might happen early on. And in fact, I know somebody who has Lewy body dementia who was firstly having taste and smell hallucinations, so smelling things that aren't there. So it's very different from Alzheimer's disease. Over time, they will struggle with memory, because as the damage happens in the brain, that's what we're going to see. We also have people with vascular dementia. Their deterioration might be different because it might be associated more after they've had a stroke, and then they might go on to have another stroke. So whereas people who have other types of dementia, they may deteriorate in a sort of more gradual way. Someone with vascular dementia, it may be more stepwise. So we'll see that deterioration after they may have had a stroke. And then when we look at frontotemporal dementia, and that's named after the area of the brain that is affected, and that is very much affects people's language skills, their communication. I think we've all heard about Bruce Willis, haven't we, with his aphasia. He has frontotemporal dementia. And also, it can affect people's behaviour, again, depending on where that damage is. So the person may become more disinhibited, they've lost their filters, they may become quite obsessive and quite impulsive in their behaviour. So you can see they're all very different conditions, really. And we tend to look at the dementias in 3 stages, sort of early, moderate, and then more advanced. But again, we have to be very careful because it affects people in different ways. But over time, people will struggle with their vision, how they see. Their memory will continue to get worse, forgetting names of people, forgetting the names of objects. They will struggle. One of the big important messages today really is that everything slows down. So their ability to process information really slows down. So we need to slow down with them. So they're processing information through their eyes, through their hearing, and through trying to understand what we're saying. So that's a big message, really. We need to slow down to help them. Also, over time, they'll struggle to make decisions and make judgments. So, for example, they may, we've got beautiful weather at the moment. Well, we have in Cardiff. I'm not sure. I know Amy was saying it was raining in Southampton, but somebody may not be able to feel or sense that it's hot out there, so they may be wearing inappropriate clothes, and this is often a very sad case when people may go missing and they may have got lost and they may be wearing not the best clothes for the weather. So there's an awful lot more that can happen with dementia, and I know Gemma and Amy are going to show a film in a little while about our amazing brains, because we actually take our brains for granted so much until something happens. So yeah, I think is that okay, Gemma? Or
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think one of the big things is understanding that dementia is that umbrella term. I think we all
Yeah.
kind of say dementia, and like I said earlier, we kind of think about that media portrayed dementia.
Yes.
Forgetting stuff, and it looks the same, it's portrayed the same a lot in media, on different TV programs, etc. And it is about understanding those different types and the different signs and symptoms to look for. And I think that really may help some people here today watching, or people with loved ones. It's just making sure that we're aware of what to look for, and I think that's really important, again, that we kind of explore that. So as Jane alluded to, we do have a video to look through all about our brains.
Our brains are absolutely amazing at helping us think, feel emotion, behave, sense the world around us, and move. They control our memory, thoughts, speech, and movement, and the organs in our bodies. Our brains are made up of billions of nerve cells that create connections, pathways, and networks for information to be received and transmitted to and from the outside world. These nerve cells branch out, a bit like a tree, helping electrical signals pass through the brain and, in fact, our whole bodies. There are 3 main parts of the brain. All are connected by these branches and pathways. It is good to have a basic understanding of how our brain works so that we can understand what can happen when it starts to deteriorate, as in dementia. Here is the brainstem, the oldest part of the brain, otherwise known as the hindbrain or reptilian brain, as it shares the same functions as a reptile. This includes heartbeat, breathing, digestion, ability to swallow, and our waking and sleep cycle. It also helps control our movements, temperature, keeps our posture and balance, and coordination of muscles. The midbrain relays information from the body to the largest part of the brain, known as the forebrain, which is divided into 2 hemispheres. The right hemisphere controls the left side of our bodies, and the left hemisphere controls the right. So you may have seen that when a person who has had a stroke on the right side of their brain may show signs of weakness or paralysis on the left side of their body, and vice versa. The forebrain is also made up of 4 parts called lobes: the frontal, parietal, temporal, and the occipital. Remember I mentioned those nerve pathways? Well, they also provide connections between all of the lobes. So let's start off by exploring the frontal lobe. This is the area responsible for our personality, behaviour, emotions, and when we make decisions, plan, and solve problems. So, for instance, if we were planning to go to work, we might be making decisions about what to wear, what to eat beforehand, how to get there, where to go, and generally plan about how to go about it. This might involve solving problems such as when the car doesn't start, or when we miss the bus. We might need to make alternative plans. These are the sort of things that can be difficult when the frontal lobe is damaged. Damage to this area can also lead to difficulties with concentration, learning new tasks, and changes in personality, where we may see a lack of caring and empathy for others, and where the person may display inappropriate behaviour. Remember, such behaviours are caused by the dementia and not the person deciding to be difficult. The left frontal lobe houses the Broca's area, named after Dr. Broca, a 19th century French physician. He found that when this area is damaged, speech is affected, as the person may struggle to move their facial muscles and tongue to form sounds. The person may still be able to read and understand what is said to them, but may have difficulty speaking. The right frontal lobe is more involved with imagination, intuition, curiosity, creativity, and musical and artistic ability. So let's go on to look at the parietal lobe, which is mainly responsible for receiving and processing information from our senses. That is our seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and sensing pain and temperature. It is also responsible for visual and spatial perception, helping us judge where things and our body are in space. For example, if someone handed you a cup of tea and you had problems with your visual spatial perception, you might misjudge where your hand is, how big or small it is, and where the cup is in relation to you. Damage to the parietal lobe can also lead to difficulty with speech, known as aphasia, and the inability to recognize objects normally. We call this agnosia. Moving on our whistle-stop tour, we find the 2 temporal lobes. Easy to remember the name as they are close to our temples on either side of our head. The temporal lobes are largely responsible for processing and attention of our hearing, our memory, emotions, understanding, and language and learning.
Bonjour.
Damage to our temporal lobes can lead to problems in understanding what is being said to us. This is known as receptive aphasia. It can also cause difficulties with attention to what we see and hear, ability to retain new information, recognize faces, and responsible for some emotional changes. The person may not also recognize and name objects, have difficulty speaking while knowing what they want to say, or recognize what someone else is saying to them. They may appear to speak long sentences, but there may be little meaning behind the words and sounds made. This is really important to know, for when we approach some people who have dementia, they really may not be able to process what we're saying to them, however we say it. The person may be unable to follow conversations, and they may also struggle to find words. People might often say, "It's on the tip of my tongue." They may know what they want to say, but can't get the words out. Be aware that language abilities may wax and wane, and sometimes, as I'm sure you've seen, people have good days and not so good days, and moments of clarity. And sometimes people struggle less at certain times of the day. Lastly, we move on to our occipital lobe at the back of the brain. This is responsible for how we process visual information, where we work out colour, light, and movement. And damage to this area includes changes in vision, which can be partial or full blindness. People can also experience visual hallucinations too, which means they may see things that aren't actually there. Some people may also not be able to see more than one thing at a time. So, for example, only seeing a plate, but not the food on it. So imagine that you're having your tea and somebody came up to you to let you know your food was on your plate. But you can't understand what they're saying to you, and you may not actually be able to see the food on the plate or even the plate. How would you feel? What would you be thinking? And how might you react? These are things we need to think about very much when we're caring with people who have dementia. So that was our whistle-stop tour of our amazing brain and the nerve pathways that connect everything together and help us process and respond to information inside and out of our bodies. We found out about the different areas of the brain and what they're responsible for, and how and when they deteriorate it may affect a person. Now you have an idea of how our brains work. One thing to bear in mind is that when we're caring with people, we try not to focus too much on what they struggle with. But by understanding why they have problems with certain things, we can learn how we can help them. It's very important that we focus on what they can still do. So let's work with their strengths, and while we're at it, let's work with ours too.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that video, Jane. I know you sent it over to us, and myself and Amy absolutely loved it. And just how it really brings to life all the different areas that we may forget. Like I said before, thinking we're just talking about memory, it really brings to light all the different signs and symptoms that we need to be aware of, and implications that something like dementia can have on the individuals around us. So thank you so much for providing that, and I hope everyone enjoyed watching that I was going to say at home or in the office, wherever you may be actually, or on the bus. We're now going to look at some myth busters. So something we love to do here at My Learning Cloud is to stop those myths, because there is no point in us trying to support individuals if we're still going to believe in historical I guess, opinions that were formed around the people that we support. So let's have a look at some of the common misconceptions around dementia. So dementia is a normal part of aging. Jane, what's your opinion on that one? You are on mute. Sorry, Jane. You're on mute.
Always do that. It's not an opinion, it's a fact that dementia is not a normal part of aging. It is a disease of the brain. And even though we hear some people saying, oh, well, it's my age, no, it's not normal. It's a condition. And there we are. So, yeah.
It's as simple as that. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Next one we've got was dementia only affects older people. Amy, I know you've written the course and you've been helping with Jane. What was your thoughts on that one?
Well, it doesn't, quite simply, it doesn't only affect older people. So if an individual is diagnosed with dementia under the age of 65, they are considered to have early onset dementia, and this affects tens of thousands of people in the UK. I believe the statistics are around 70,000 people. Jane, I think that's roughly, I think, where we are. So it is, along with the memory loss, when people with dementia are depicted in the media, it's quite often the first thought you think of is of an elderly individual. But it's not, people who still have very young children can be diagnosed with dementia, which can have huge implications for, them as parents, their family life. So it really is about understanding that if you notice signs and symptoms, don't dismiss them just because someone's in their 40s, in their 50s, in their early 60s. Yeah, Jane, I don't know if you had any more to say about that.
Yeah, just, well, not much because that was so eloquently put, Amy, but just that, frontotemporal dementia is often seen in people in their sort of early 40s, like you say. There are also dementias that are in the childhood population as well, that we're finding and understanding more and more. So yeah, it's definitely, although the risk is higher as people age, that's the main reason that we look at older adults, isn't it? That the risk of developing it gets more as we get older, but actually, yeah, it does affect other people too.
Perfect. So, dementia is simply forgetting things. Now, we have touched on this already through the webinar. And if anyone sat watching still thinking that that's correct, let's stop that. So, Jane, we'll come to you first. It's not, is it? We've seen in that video, it's so much more.
It's so much more. I think one of the first things that I've seen often is attention. We understand more about attention deficit disorders, and we've been doing a lot of research around this, that actually dementia is very much affects a person's ability to zone out of everything in their environment and attend to things. So, I think it's just traditionally we had memory clinics, and that's how it became a bit more marked. But yeah, there are so many other symptoms that people can be getting as well.
Absolutely. Amy, anything to add to that one?
No, I don't think so. It is just kind of that understanding that it is so much more, and understanding that all these different things can affect the way an individual presents, and how you interact with them.
And I think it goes back through the message we have through quite a few of our courses as well, and it touched on it in that video, is that the behaviour is a communication of fear or agitation or being unaware of their surroundings or uncomfortable in that. And it's always remembering that a behaviour is a communication form.
And this is what I cover a lot in my training, is we firstly explore how the dementia is affecting the person, so how the person is experiencing their world. And actually, it makes total sense then why somebody might be stressed and agitated, because they may not be seeing properly, they may not be hearing properly, everything's slowing down, and there are a lot of people who have dementia on my training, and they talk a lot about needing to be made to feel safe. So at the end of the day, our brain is there to help us keep safe. Sometimes those behaviours are our brains trying to actually help us feel safe, whether that means we lash out, hit out because we're frightened and we can't make sense of our environment, or whether we withdraw. We might see some people who just give up. So again, it is all around trying. As we can see, our brains are phenomenal, but when they start to go wrong, it can be really distressing for people. And I think more and more over the years I've been working in this field, I've come to the conclusion it's about that feeling of feeling safe, and that's our aim, is to help people.
Absolutely. Okay, you can only have one type of dementia. So earlier you spoke about the different dementias, Jane, and what, we have the umbrella term of dementia, but everything that sits underneath it. Amy, I know you've written our course lately and talked about all the types of dementia. Is it you can only have one type?
Well, no, you can also have mixed dementia. So I think the most common combination of mixed dementia is Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, I believe. But individuals can be diagnosed with other types of dementia because, as Jane said, dementia is that umbrella term. There's different kind of ways that the brain can be affected, and it can be affected by more than one. So like vascular dementia, as you said, can be caused by little strokes, and the individual could have that on top of having Alzheimer's, which again kind of only compounds the effect that dementia does have on their life.
Yeah, absolutely, Amy. I totally agree. And of course, vascular dementia is often caused by people who may have diabetes or cardiovascular problems. So if they've got all those sort of difficulties on top of other conditions, then it's quite likely that vascular dementia can be a mix. It can be a mixed picture. I do know a few people who've got Lewy body dementia who've also got diagnosis of vascular as well. There is also the fact that we've got better at diagnosing, but I do wonder sometimes how accurate people's diagnosis has been over the years. But again, they're all effects of the brain and caused by different reasons.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much, both of you. People who have dementia don't understand what is happening around them. thoughts on that one, Jane?
Well, I'd like to give an example here because Andy, who's in my training, I've got a film where he talks a lot about his experience of being in hospital. And as soon as people know he has a diagnosis of dementia, they don't talk to him. They don't understand what type of dementia he has and actually and what stage he's at either. He's very eloquent, he's very aware of what's going on around him, and he has been for 15 years as well, you know. So everybody's experience of dementia is different. It's more really about when people become more into the advanced stage. I think if I can go back on this, and this is one of my big messages as well, is people may struggle to know what's happening around them if there's a lot of noise, if they're not seeing very well, or they're not hearing very well. So our big message today as well for you all is to actually help the person optimize how they're experiencing their world. So, you know, not having too much noise. Biggest bugbear of mine is a radio on in the background. Plenty of light, so that we can help them make sense of what's happening around them as well.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much. A real common one, and one that I think will be close to a lot of people maybe potentially listening, is because my parent has or had dementia, I'm going to get it too.
No, the majority of people living with dementia don't have a strong genetic link. Genetics do play a role in the development of some types of dementia, but that is less than 5% of people who have Alzheimer's disease. It's a very rare form. So I would try not to get too anxious about that.
Perfect. I think, again, it's just these common misconceptions, which it's really nice to sometimes just hear the truth about, and things like, you know, parents having dementia and it's simply forgetting things. Just to really understand that a little bit further really empowers the people to support individuals with dementia better, because it just stops you being as, I guess, linear with your approach, and make sure that you understand that every individual person-centered support is our message throughout My Learning Cloud. It is the person you're supporting, not the diagnosis in any situation. And I think that really speaks loudly here with dementia as well. So we're going to move on to our tips for positively supporting those with dementia. We can all take it in turns. Amy, do you want to start with this one?
I'll kick us off. Yeah, that's fine. So this first one is about making sure that the individuals had their hearing and eyesight tested and corrected where needed. Going back to what Jane, you were saying a couple of moments ago about really optimizing the individual's kind of opportunity to understand what's going on around them. And sometimes if the individual isn't able to identify, you know, I guess for me, I know when I need my eyesight tested. I get a letter through the post. I can see that I can't quite see things in the distance anymore, and I kind of have the capacity to make that decision and communicate that I need to go and get my eyes tested. Individuals with dementia may have difficulties with their communication. They may have difficulties understanding and then planning, making that appointment. So it's about helping them and recognizing that maybe if they're not as engaged in watching the television anymore, maybe they're not responding when you're talking to them or responding to the noises around them. Maybe it's something to explore. It might not be that, but it's giving them the opportunity to have that corrected and to have that assessed.
Absolutely. And if I can add to what Amy was just saying, totally, hearing loss is one of we found out recently is the highest risk factor for developing dementia. Now, whether that's because of where the damage is in the brain, or the fact that often people who have hearing loss will withdraw over time, so they won't be hearing sounds, they won't be practicing their language either, and often withdraw. So it's really important that we actually help a person have their hearing tested. There are audiologists and optometrists who will come out to the home or to the care home and do all the tests necessary and to help people. And of course, then the big thing, sorry about that, that was my email. The big thing here as well, I know after managing a care home and supporting people, it's quite hard sometimes to get a person to sort of come along, to perhaps go and be tested, because they may not understand what we're saying to them. So we might use mime, we might use gestures, but actually using perhaps a little visual cue might help. Maybe showing someone some glasses or a hearing aid or something that might help if you need to help prompt the person to have their hearing and eyesight tested.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question for anyone in the room. Tips here, people. We'll see footage of my nan shortly. My nan's got vascular dementia, 97 years of age, and one of the most incredible women I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And luckily, I can call her my nan. But so she has hearing aids. The difficulty we have with the hearing aids is that she'll forget during the day that why she's wearing them, and the fact that they are supporting her. And sometimes that's because she's not always with people, so she's not having a conversation or having to hear better. We'll often know because, when you approach her house, you can definitely hear BBC News blasting through the windows on a summer's day. So what can we put in place to support those that if they have had their, hearing and sight tested and they do need aids to support with that, to use those?
It's always a very difficult one, and
It
always a question you'd read actually. And I know from managing care home, we would often have glasses would be piling up everywhere, and it's very difficult. It's an interesting question because I'm going to just turn it on its head a little bit too. Whilst it's really important that we help a person optimize their surroundings, I've realized from my mother's experience, who wears 2 hearing aids, that sometimes she just likes to turn it all down, because sometimes hearing aids pick up all this noise out here, and it's exhausting as well, and that has an impact on attention. So it is a difficult one. I think, as with everything with dementia, there are no hard and fast rules. I think you've got to observe the person, see how they may be. Are they looking well? Are they looking disgruntled? So if they have got their hearing aids in, are they turned up too much? Again, so there's that aspect. One thing that is difficult is that the batteries run out very quickly. They're not great a lot of the time. So they may have their hearing aids in and they're blocking their ears because they're not working.
Yeah.
So again, and it is about being person-centered. Observe. The biggest thing is to observe the person in that moment in time. If they are struggling and they have got their hearing aid in, be careful how you approach them. If you go up to there, they might feel again this need to feel safe. Be very gentle and face them first of all, and try and do a bit of. We do this anyway, naturally, gestures, sign language, and things. So I haven't answered your question there, Gemma, have I?
No, but it was just because that is something that, and myself and Amy have experience in care as well, and it is one of those things. And obviously, with my nan, like you said, sometimes if we're going to the garden centre, you can tell that noise, especially where they've been in she lives independently still currently, so usually quite a quiet environment. That's very overwhelming all of a sudden, lots of noises. But it was just whether there was anything. I know that, we've done signs, and obviously things get lost quite often, or we've worn it to bed and it's in the bed sheet somewhere, and we're all hunting for the hearing aid that she absolutely does not need, Jane. But it was just any advice, and so we put stuff in the same place all the time to get that kind of pattern going, and just bits like that. So it was just interesting because those aids can cause difficulties, but they are fantastic when the person is engaging with them, I guess, is what I was kind of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one thing you've said there as well is putting things in familiar places. You've just made me think of something. A friend of mine who cares for her mum, who has dementia, when she moved into a home, they made sure her bedside cabinet was exactly the same as it was at home. So that time when you wake or when you go to sleep and you might be disorientated. So for instance, her hearing aid would be there when she, and I'm like that, like Amy with my glasses. If I can't find my glasses in the morning, that's a stress. That's a massive
Mm.
stress. So it's having those things to hand. But of course, it's very difficult because some people may not understand that they need these things either.
Exactly. And it is keeping up those regular appointments as well. It's just remembering that just because someone maybe not be complaining that it's got worse doesn't mean that it's also stayed the same either.
Yeah, absolutely. As you can
Wonderful.
tell, though, there's no such quick answers for any of these, though, are there?
Well, absolutely. And there's not for anybody, is there?
No.
I wear glass, I can get somewhere and be like, I haven't got my glasses on. It's making sure that we remember the person behind it all the time. Absolutely. So you've touched on this a bit, Jane, already. It's the slowing down principle.
Mm. So basically,
Um,
sorry,
no, no, go on.
so basically, again, as we saw, our brains are phenomenal. What we
Mm,
do, especially when we're in jobs working in care, the multitasking, our attention, there's lots of different types of attention as well. It's incredible. We can listen to something, perhaps do something. There's this, we don't realize quite what we're doing. And I often do these sort of activities with people, like, think about what do you do when you're making a cup of tea? How complex that is. Something so that we think is so easy, but actually it's very complex in what we do, using all sorts of different parts of our brain. When someone has dementia, that all slows down. The brain is deteriorating, and so we need to slow down with the person.
mm.
And a big message from Keith, who has frontotemporal dementia in some of my films, he says, the most important thing you can do is slow down, give me time. Give me time, because they may not be, if there's a lot of noise around as well, you're competing with that radio, you might go up and talk to someone, do you want a cup of tea? They might not be able to see you properly, they might not be able to hear you properly, the brain is slower. What you're saying, they may be struggling to understand the words you're saying, or
Mm.
they might have understood what you've said, but by the time they've processed that, they might have forgotten it, because of short-term memory, or they might be, but they're just slower in how they've got to think then about how they respond to that question. We take all that for granted. We're having these questions now back and forward. This takes time.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, the one thing, and I've learnt this with a 6-year-old, as well as other people and people who I've supported, don't ask again, just wait. Just wait. Not for, not forever, but give that little bit longer than you normally would. Um, it's not someone actively not listening. It potentially is someone, like you said, cognitively working out how to respond or what you have said, and or both. So just giving that space and time is really important.
And also, just one other quick thing from that, Gemma, is that maybe if they're not responding, rephrase how you've said it as well. That
Yeah,
might help. So I'm about to cough.
no, you're okay.
Mhm.
With both of you sipping water, I'll take this one, is making their surroundings light and uncluttered. And we've talked about this through the webinar anyway. It is about that, making their environment as easy for them to live in and understand as we can. Now, that doesn't mean going in and taking away everyone's stuff, because some people live differently. My version of cluttered and light will be different to somebody else's. It's just being mindful that the way that individual's brain is working and their cognitive ability to pick up on stuff has altered and will be altering there forward, and making sure that we're just being very mindful of the world that they're living in and their perception of that. Um, we've spoken about this. They're all very much environmental, but I do love that because I think we forget about it a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's looking around. Care homes are very busy, noisy places. We've got to try and quieten them down quite a bit. And again, again, looking at that person-centered, and it can be difficult trying to please everybody all the time. But certainly, if you're trying to communicate with someone, turn the radios off, turn the TV off, or take the person to somewhere quieter to try and have a conversation with them.
Absolutely. I knew there was 5, but I'm not quite sure how many we've got to. This might be the last one, it might not. Amy, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so obviously, as kind of Jane mentioned at the start, dementia is degenerative. Unfortunately, people, it takes different kind of amounts of time for them to experience symptoms, but their mental capacity and their ability to make decisions will at some point decline. So it's really important while they have that kind of capacity to talk about it, you're asking them questions about what they want to happen in the future for when they don't have the capacity to make those decisions. This could be conversations that family members lead, it could be led by the support staff, their GP, but it's all about finding out what they want their life to look like in terms of where they live, the support they receive, kind of who makes decisions for them. And it's just about recognizing, while it can be a hard and difficult emotive conversation to have, and it can be a scary conversation to have, it is a really important one.
Absolutely. And it leads into all the power of attorneys and all of that, isn't it? It's getting, and I think this goes for anyone, any age, really, but it is about that advanced planning under the circumstances, but especially like you said with dementia, a diagnosis can come at any stage if you're aware of the signs and symptoms, which is what we're hoping to share today. You may well get an earlier diagnosis, or if you go with other symptoms, but it's never a bad thing to plan for the future, especially like you said, when your capacity is there, try and have those conversations with those around you.
Can I give an example quickly before
Absolutely, yeah.
Dory, she calls herself Dory because of her short-term memory loss after the fish on Finding Nemo. She talks about her advanced care planning, and she's a landscape gardener. She loves being outdoors and she wants to die outside. So she's actually put that in her care plan, that she wants to be in a hospice and wheeled outside when it's time, her time. And it's important we have those conversations. So
Absolutely, it really is. It really is. So, if audio is all working, we should be listening to a snippet of Jim at Tea Time, and this is just about really pushing the person-centered approach. Know the person that you are talking to, if you can. So let's.
I very quickly learned how important it was for us to know about a person's background, especially when they've been through major stresses and trauma in their lives. Jim came to our home from hospital quite suddenly. We didn't know anything about him other than he'd been in hospital with an infection, and the hospital needed to find somewhere for him to be discharged to. We couldn't get hold of any of his family as they were travelling back from Australia, where his daughter now lived. We tried to help him settle in, but he seemed very unhappy, and then at tea time, he exploded into a rage, knocking the teacup out of our hands and becoming very upset. I had heard about Sundowning and always noticed that some of our residents would become a bit unsettled early evening, but his reaction was quite violent, thrashing out and shouting at us. We felt helpless, and we were a bit scared. No one wanted to go anywhere near him. It happened at other times of the day too. After a couple of days, his daughter arrived and sat down with us and told us Jim's heartbreaking story. He'd been a prisoner of war in the Far East on a tea plantation, where he'd been tortured, starved, and watched his friends and army colleagues die. Somehow he survived, and when the camps were liberated, he came home. He vowed never ever to drink tea again in his life. That's all the family knew of his experience, as he never spoke of it again. There had always been a sadness around him, his daughter told us. Offering him a cup of tea at tea time and throughout the day triggered very painful memories where he'd been enslaved. And as he was in a new place, we think he might have started feeling imprisoned again. It all made sense once we knew. It took a while for Jim to settle in and trust us. We focused on other positive parts of his life, as he'd also been a keen footballer, so with the help of his daughter, we managed to find old football collector's cards and other memorabilia from his favourite team. We respected that he would often want to be alone, and we did not want to ever make him feel those feelings that he had during the war again. And we never ever offered him a cup of tea again. and we wrote this into his care plan.
I think it's a really important snippet there that we've listened to. And again, it just goes into everything we've been talking and weaves its way in beautifully of we don't know everything and we can't know everything. And different people's behaviors when they have dementia that they cannot then communicate as to why that behavior is, or certain characteristics and things that they've gone through. It's really important to have those good support plans, be talking to family members, you know, multi-agencies if they have been involved with any beforehand, and really getting to know that individual, not their diagnosis.
Absolutely.
So that was a really fantastic bit to listen to, and I hope you all, I was going to say enjoyed that, it's not quite the right word, but got something from that at least. So the last thing we want to talk about really today is what we can all do to raise awareness and understanding of dementia. So I'm going to kick this off. Everyone can see that I'm smiling because here is my nan. You won't be able to hear her. I'm not quite sure why the audio's not there, and my nan won't mind me saying it's probably for the best anyway. But this is my nan at a memory choir that she attends. They did a VE event and they travel around town centres in Hampshire to bring awareness of dementia. And as you can see, my nan is very much enjoying herself here. She may not always remember who I am anymore, but she does remember the words to these songs and it brings her great happiness to sing them. So this is the memory choir in Hampshire. And also I know that the local homestead near us in Stubbington are starting a memory choir. So it's things like that. I know there's day centres, there's different charities that really want to support that awareness and understanding of dementia. Amy and Jane, is there anything in particular that comes to mind for you guys when we're talking about awareness and understanding?
Go on, Amy.
Are you sure? I was just going to say conversations between ourselves as well. For those of you that have kind of watched this webinar today and taken something from it, have a conversation, friends, family, colleagues. You never know kind of who it's going to touch, who it's going to make something click for. That, you know, these kind of topics have for so long not necessarily been taboo, but with the misconceptions, it's not often something you talk about until it's affecting you, and then sometimes it can be too difficult to talk about. So really kind of getting the knowledge out there, having open, frank conversations about it can also be really important.
Absolutely, Amy. And I think most GP surgeries now have what's called a social prescriber. So that when somebody, and it's not necessarily always with patients or residents or people who have dementia, but they can signpost people to what's going on in the local area. Because that's the thing, it's all very fragmented. Different places will have different services. I would definitely love to do a shout out to Sporting Memories. So you might want to look them up. They are a charity throughout the country, and Playlist for Life as well. So it's around, again, music, sport, finding out how we can help that person stay well, because it's all about living well with dementia as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for your time today and talking about this subject. Amy, I know that you were keeping an eye out. Did we have any Q&As coming through?
We haven't actually had any, to be fair.
Okey
I
doke.
think we've given so much information. Maybe people have been kind of listening along.
We'll take it as a good sign, everybody, shall we? Absolutely. So obviously, with all of our webinars, they are available for you, and we will send you the links of the recordings for you to look back at. What I will say is thank you again to Dr. Jane Mullins for being with us and our SME on the course. I know that myself and Amy have really valued your input and your opinions and your research into dementia. And as you can tell, it's very close to my heart and something that I care very passionately about. So thank you very much.
That's okay.
Um,
Thanks for having me.
anything more from you two at all before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Just to echo Gemma and say thank you, Jane, for your help with the course and the webinar.
That's okay. And if anyone's interested in my work, they can find me at findingthelightindementia.com, if that helps as well.
Absolutely. And I will say that I did meet somebody who was very excited that we were having you on the webinar and apparently carried your book around with them everywhere they went, Jane. So
Oh, well, that's very nice.
your work is being recognised, and that's lovely. So again, thank you everybody in terms of who's been here with us today. If you do have any questions or queries at all, then please feel free to reach out. Either to myself or to your account manager at My Learning Cloud. And of course, if you'd like to receive training or anything from Jane at all, then as she said, please do reach out to her. We thank you so much for your time and joining us. And thank you so much for everybody for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.